was. So let's get into viewing conditions. So when we're using film, we needed illuminators. We needed to see what was on the film. So we would hang the film up and we would turn on the illuminator, also called a light box. And basically the light output was reduced over time. It can be reduced over time, causing a loss of the display image contrast. So they have to do quality control on these view boxes or light boxes. And in mammography departments, they had to do it weekly. So with those light boxes, okay, we needed to do some quality control, and they would do this with this photometer. Basically what they would do is you would see if it is producing the light that it should, or the light output that it needs to penetrate through the film, so we can see it. So talking about a view box quality control testing is inspect the front for discoloration, dust, or other artifacts. So we're looking at the view box itself. We would remove the front and inspect the fluorescent bulbs for cleanliness or discoloration, and for the proper wattage if you see that there's something going on or something's not right with that, or it's too bright. Determine the luminescence level of a single view box with a photometer. It should be at least 1500 nit for general radiography and 350 nit for mammography. So you need to determine the view box uniformity. You take the luminescence readings of the center of the view box and the center of each quadrant with a photometer. You compare the 5 readings and make sure that they do not deviate more than 10% from one another. Continuing, you determine the uniformity of the bank of view boxes by comparing the central luminance readings of each view box. Make sure that they are within plus or minus 15% of each other. And determine the uniformity of all departmental view boxes by comparing the central readings of each, and then making sure that between departments those view boxes don't vary more than plus or minus 20% of each other. Pretty straightforward. So we need to measure the color temperament of the view box. Again, this is usually done by someone like a physicist or something like this, but again, you're probably going to need to know this for a quiz somewhere. So what's going on here is the color temperature. We're measuring the whiteness of the light. It requires a color temperature meter, and the range should be 5400 degrees Kelvin to 10,000 degrees Kelvin, and then the optimum is 6250 degrees Kelvin. Okay, and then lastly, we want to measure the ambient light levels. So it requires a photometer to do this, to measure the luminescence of either foot or candles or lux. Some of you might be in photography and they basically use lux or lumens to determine how low of light you can get an exposure with. So the maximum ambient light measured should not exceed 30 foot CD or 320 lux. Excessive ambient light will reduce display image contrast. So there's a few view box quality control methods there, and that's considering our viewing conditions. I know this is probably not very familiar to most of you, but luckily enough, this stuff is fairly straightforward, and I will try to cut you a break in the quizzes. All right? So I will catch up to you in the next session.